The mind can ramble off in strange ways.
You're in for a real treat.
Punchline podcast.
Your next comic has been on the Jay Leno Show, David Letterman. Please welcome the very funny Mitch Fatel.
Punchline podcast.
Oh, that guy's fucking hilarious.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
Punchlines. Okay, welcome back. Punchline podcast.
Well, you said welcome back, but we haven't been anywhere.
We were just eating burritos right before the last one.
It can't be a welcome back because
Okay.
we didn't leave anywhere. Okay, start again.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
start again.
Go ahead. No, I'm leaving that in.
Oh, are you leaving
Yeah.
that in? Okay, so this is happening.
Yeah, if you
All right,
want to
well,
do
my
welcome
name's
back,
Corey. This is Punchline Podcast. Mitch kind of helps out sometimes.
Welcome back.
And,
welcome back, everybody.
and yeah, we have Drew Dober today. Drew, really close teammate of mine, really close friend of mine, I would say. Best known in the MMA world for his legs. And
well, thanks for having me and my legs.
You can't see him through the boots, but
I've seen
they're
him.
pretty.
I've
they're pretty
watched
attractive.
Drew fight quite a bit, so
Yeah.
I know about his. Yeah.
I mean, my denim is holding on for dear life right now, so you're welcome.
Yeah, Drew also never really wears a shirt too often.
It saves on laundry.
Like, wait, meaning like just during the day at the bus stop or something? Or?
Just as much as I can, just no shirt.
Yep, pretty much.
I wish I felt that comfortable that I could walk around shirtless.
If you
most
looked
of the
like
time.
that, you might.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the key is you fake it till you make it. Like,
No, I've been faking it for a long time. I've never made it.
Yeah, Drew, really happy to have you on, man. Thanks for coming
I
on.
appreciate it.
You know the big difference right away between you and Drew? Is he looks like a fighter. You look like you're here to do someone's lawn.
I don't even know if that's a compliment. Like, you look like a fighter.
No, I mean,
like, do I look
You
like I
look
get
like
punched in the face? You look like you have a leather face, like a lot of callus just
Corey,
all over.
you get that, right? Like, no, like,
Yeah, all the time.
you don't look like the typical person you would think is a fighter.
Yeah.
And that's probably even a good thing because probably in the beginning you were probably underestimated, I would assume.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know. That
Like, I
doesn't
think I
really
could take
register
you.
to
Like,
me.
I really, there's a side of me
Most
that
people probably
thinks
do,
I
man.
could take. I
It
don't think I
works in
could
my
take
favor,
Drew, though.
I think that, like, guys probably think I'm an easy fight, and then when they find out that it's not, then it works out in my favor. But yeah.
I think that's the scariest thing about fighting, though. It's like the most unopposing or unthreatening guys just know the craziest stuff.
Yeah.
So like Corey and I know a bunch of other fighters that like you look, like meet them at a bar or like a bus stop and you're like, oh man, he's just not gonna do anything. But as soon as you mouth off, like they'll turn you into a pretzel real quick.
Well, Drew, have you ever been in a situation where someone in the outside world starts to kind of like get in your face and in a way you kind of smile like you probably don't want to do this? It's just
Only once. So like every once in a while, like I don't like working off the clock.
Right.
So if
That's
I'm
what
not
I
getting
think.
paid for anything, I'll be the first one to buy you a drink. Just like, come on, we don't have to do this.
dude,
Like, let's
number
sit
one
down.
thing for me on a plane or whatever, what do you do for a living? I'm a comedian. Oh man, tell me jokes. And I'm like, I am off the clock now. If I'm not getting paid, I'm not going to, I'll talk about what you want to do for a living. I'll talk about all kinds of stuff like that, but I'm not going to joke around.
Well, I mean, I was actually having this conversation the other day with somebody, and like comedy is like similar to like music or like art. And you're like, oh, I'm a musician or I'm an artist. Like people are like, well, paint some right now. Like, show me some art. Draw for me right now.
Right.
And you're like, man, I can't just do this like out of nowhere. Like, can you be funny real quick?
No
Do
one
it.
says that for us, though. Show me
Yeah.
how you can fight right now.
But what I will say is this, another similarity between comedy and fighting. Everybody who watches UFC thinks they can do that. Like even me,
Yeah.
like I watch a lot of UFC and even me, like if someone gets in my face, I'm like, I could probably choke them out. Like, and I've never even done it in my life, but I've watched it so many times and I'm like, can't be that hard. Like just choke out a guy. And I'm like, and the minute, but yet if I'm on stage and someone heckles me, I'll do everything suddenly to not get in a fight because I get so scared. But beforehand, I'm always like, if I'm not in that set, I'm like, yeah, I could probably take that guy. Everybody thinks that they can probably fight in the UFC.
Until you do it for a living and you realize
Right.
that you just don't know anything. It's just super hard to choke somebody out. So like I'll do everything I can to not fight anyone ever.
Yeah. And so this leads in perfectly to my questions for you, which is I looked at your record and there's something so interesting about your fights. The first thing that's interesting is, and I wanted to get into your mindset of this, you won your first fight ever, your first pro fight you won.
Yep.
And then you lost 2 right after that. And I was just thinking that's got to really mentally play with you, because the first fight, I'm assuming you go, okay, I'm as invincible as I thought I was going to be. And then you assume you're going to win your next 2 after that, but then you lost your next 2. So I wanted to go through your mindset when that happened.
Right. I always, thought I was like overhyped as an amateur. I had all these like amateur fights and I was doing extremely well. So I didn't have to like change up anything. Like I was just doing the same thing over and over and over. And so when I turned professional, it only took 2 fights before somebody realized like, I'm just going to game plan this guy. So my first loss, like I got game planned hard. Everything I did well, he negated, and like I had nothing left.
Yeah.
And so I lost by decision just because like all my strengths were negated and I had nowhere else to like win the fight. And then so that's when I learned, it's probably better for fighters to lose earlier on in the career. Because,
that was my next question.
The longer you go doing the same thing over and over, if you like have your first loss in the UFC, I mean, you have these guys that are extremely talented taking advantage of any mistake, and you've never had to overcome the adversity of like, hey, this is not working, I need to do something else.
Right.
Wait, can we touch on what do you mean you felt like you were an overhyped amateur?
Oh, so like in Nebraska, like I had like 12 MMA fights and like 12 amateur Muay Thai fights. And because I was fighting so consistently at 18 years old, I fought in Strike Force. I got like a first round knockout in Strike Force when I was 18 years old.
Wow,
so,
that was like, when you were 18?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, so like they threw me in magazines, like Fight Magazine had stuff on me, and they were doing things where like, we want to find the best like amateur fighter in the world to compete against Drew Dober. So like I was scheduled to fight Iaquanta once. And like, I mean, I was doing really well, but like it was being publicized. Like people were really just throwing my brand out there. And so then when I turned professional, we went through, I think it was like 5 opponents, and I ended up fighting a guy that was like a Bellator veteran for my first fight.
Right.
And so then it was just like, there was no easy fights after that,
But did you feel like that? Did you feel like you were the overhyped one? Like, were you like, oh man, I'm getting a lot of attention here and I don't really know that I'm that good?
Well, so that's the, the crappy thing, being 18 or 19 years old, like you already feel invincible when you're being told you're invincible.
Right.
I mean, it was as extreme as, so a lot of my amateur fights were in professional promotions like Strike Force for one. And so Sherdog had my record as 7-0 as a professional, but all my fights were amateur. I wasn't getting paid for it. So the WEC contacted me and asked me if I would fight, and they just wanted to use my current record on Sherdog as my professional record. And I was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea, because then the 2 opponents they offered me was Jose Aldo and there was a 55
Scott Jorgensen.
Yeah, no. It was he fought Ben Henderson instead. I forgot the guy's name, but anyway, it was like a super top guy. So generally, I just felt like I'm being thrown to the wolves, like right out the gate, you know. And so when I finally turned professional, like I wanted that to be like known, like this is my very first professional fight, and I should fight accordingly.
Wow, and you had the wits about you at that age to like.
That's what I was thinking. That's a really young age. Not get carried away with your own height.
If I was having that much attention when I was 18 years old, I would be a huge dumbass at this point in my life, I would say.
Well, I think it goes back to, I was training with guys like Jake Ellenberger, Joe Ellenberger, like guys that are like pretty established at that point, and I was getting my ass kicked every single day. So I was like, oh man, I need to slow down. I need to get this right. And, longevity is a thing too. So the reason it took me so long to turn professional was I couldn't decide if I wanted to do Muay Thai or MMA. And if you turn professional in MMA, you have to turn professional in Muay Thai. And MMA is fine, but professional like Muay Thai fighters have like 100+ fights. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, I gotta make sure that I'm able to hang with these guys before I turn pro.
And then when you turn professional, that means like at that point, that's how you're making a living. or just professional just means you're just going to start getting paid for the fights? What's
we're talking about fighting here. So like to make a living in fighting is practically impossible. Like when you turn professional, it's just like a glorified hobby at this point. You got to keep your day job. You
Same with comedy. Absolutely. Yeah. And the weird thing is you almost get a certain kind of fame with it, but the fame doesn't match with the money.
Right.
So like I remember very early in my career, like I got a couple of TV shows and I was living in a attic of some old woman's house paying $250 rent. And so I'd meet some girls at clubs and they'd come back to my place and they'd be like, is this where you live? And you could just see like everything falling apart. Like they just assume if they've seen you. People have an amazing assumption that if you've ever been on TV, you're just a millionaire immediately.
Right. I mean, I like fighting is very similar to like, I'm sure like musicians or comedians or, I mean, we get renowned, but like, yeah, the money doesn't reflect that. But like the amount of money is just limitless. Like you can end up going from $5 to $1 million. Like, and so that's the cool part. Like there's no really ceiling to how much we can make, as long as we play our cards right.
So on that subject, then, does that mean that you have to love fighting to do it, because it's not a realistic way to look at making a living?
No, yeah, of course. If the passion and love is not in fighting, like it's definitely not for you. Like not like financially, but also health wise. If you're not 100% in this game and giving 100%, like you can physically get hurt.
And then like comedy, because I always tell people the biggest scam is that I've been paid for it, because I would do it for free. And I remember the first time, and I wonder if it's similar to you guys, the first time I got a $50 check for doing a spot that I had to drive 8 hours to do. It was in Watertown, New York. I lived in New York City. It was 8 hours. It looked like Alaska. There was this little club that hired me, and I went up and I came off and the guy gave me a $50 check. And I remember thinking like, I got to get in the car before he takes this back, because he doesn't realize how stupid he is that he just gave this to me. I would have come up here to do it for free. And I think that that's the only way you can get successful in any kind of business, is if you're like, I would do this for free if I had to.
That is a cool thing to think about too, because I remember very vividly after my first professional fight where I wasn't even expecting to get paid, because I forgot that I was even going to get paid and that it was a professional fight. But I remember the guy coming in the back and giving me $1,000. And I was like, whoa, like cool. Like I looked at my coach and I was like, whoa, cool. Like $1,000, and like now like $1,000 isn't really, I mean, at the level that we fight at now, like, well, what's $1,000,
I know.
But I was so excited about that $1,000 that first time.
But you gotta think about like the math here, right? So if we can fight maybe 5 times a year, at like, getting paid maybe $1,000, $2,000, right? So for like, we're like giving our health and our lives to the sport for only making maybe like 10 to 15 grand a year.
Right.
Like that's less than like a McDonald's manager, And so you have to love it because,
And then there also comes a point where, I was talking to my wife about this. We're big Cowboy fans, of course. And, Cerrone's got a kid that's exactly our age right now. My son is 2. For the first time in my life now, I despise going on the road, because I don't get to see my son grow up. And then I hear fighter stories about having to leave and going to camps for like 6. You guys don't have kids at that point. And I would always think like, if a guy like Cowboy, like, at what point do you start going, I'm only going to be here a certain amount of time. I have to stop getting hit in the head because I have a little boy, and that's got to start to play into him too. After his last couple of fights where he's getting beat up, you go, you have to kind of like weigh that with your love of it and then your family and stuff,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like late 20s, early 30s, like all fighters should kind of think like, how long do I have? What should I do? But I think every fighter from, the beginning to the end should always think about longevity as far as their health goes, as far as like the supplements they take, the way they train. Right. I mean, we watch like boxers, and I feel like the way boxers train is just absolutely outrageous. And then football players, like the way from what I've heard, football players are like making adjustments for like concussions and stuff like that. But I really think in the fight world, being mindful of like concussions and the way you train, and you don't have to fight every single day you're in the gym. Just fight only 3 times a year.
Yeah, man. I would say I mean, most of the time, I would say most of that brain damage that occurs is done in the training room anyways. You know, like you have, I think on our team, on Elevation, we train very smart, but for a lot of people, it's not that way. So if you're sparring 2-3 times a week and you're sparring like you're getting paid $100,000 to win that round, then like you're going to take a lot of damage in those throughout your career. And that's kind of, I think, where the problem really resides. But
Corey had a really interesting story he told me recently about a friend of his that had to get out of MMA. And I said, because we've become pretty friendly, and I've said, like, you know, the difference is when I'm going on stage, I'm scared of dying, but I'm scared of dying just the audience not liking me and going home and getting in the fetal position because I feel unloved. Whereas you guys are going out and you do have a chance of actually dying. And he said that a friend of his, you said a friend of yours actually had that on his mind too often. Right. And he couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say his name, but I don't face this fear. Maybe it's because I just kind of push that. This is one of them that I'll just push really, really underneath there. But yeah, some people really do walk out thinking that they might die in that cage. And that's I don't know. What do you think about that? That never really even crosses my mind. But when this person said that to me, I was like, whoa, like that was something I'd never had even thought.
I don't think it really crosses my mind.
Yeah.
You know, for me, like, 'cause there's a lot of checks and balances in MMA, but I mean, there's guys that do like, you know, that Free Solo documentary where guys are just climbing mountains with no cables.
Yep,
so like
some
people just chase that, like, you know, I'm not living until I fear death. But I mean, it's just in this, like, again, this sport, it's, if you don't absolutely love it, it's not for you.
But you know, that is true. And you need that feeling. Like my wife once said to me, would you ever be able to give up stand up? And I said, I'll do it till the day I die, because I love that feeling of being at the cliff and telling a brand new joke that's never been said before and just not knowing what's going to happen. And I go, and that's been in me since I was a kid. And I love that feeling. Some people don't want that feeling. I like that feeling of not knowing what's about to happen. And, you know, and that's the one thing I always felt like I was luckier than a fighter, even though I've always loved fighting, because I was like, the longevity that I'll have is I can do it into my 80s. What I didn't realize once I got a family was, oh, but that's a commitment of like leaving your family for insane. If you want to do this, you're just leaving your family constantly. And that's what I'm dealing with now as an older person now. It's just like, oh my God, I have to just leave my family regularly.
Do you really think you could do it till you're 80? That would be a pretty badass Netflix special.
Yeah.
You're 80 years old.
I think I'll do it till the day I die. Yeah. Okay. I mean, don't you think that you'll always...
I'll be in the gym.
You'll always be in the gym. Yep. It's got to be something that you know?
Yeah, and actually this is a really good segue into why I was really excited to have Drew as a guest and being one of the first ones is because... Drew, I would describe on our team as one of the fighters that's easily the most eager to learn, you know, which I think
great quality.
Yeah, which I think is something that like is a direct correlation into how much you're in love with what you're doing, because you want to learn more and more about it all of the time. And I wanted to ask you, because you've been in the UFC for how many years?
I think 5 or 6 years.
5 years. So to me, that's a long time.
That's
like,
really
and you've been fighting, and you made a Strikeforce debut when you were 18. So how old are you now?
30.
Yeah, 30, man. So that's a really long time to be in the game. And for me, being newer to the UFC, I wanted to get your opinion and kind of just ask you about like how do you keep that eagerness to learn? Because man, like Drew is like, he'll ask questions, he'll show up to drilling sessions so that he can just have personal one-on-ones with coaches. And it's just like, it's just different because we don't see that. I mean, we've seen a lot of fighters, and you'd actually be surprised as to how much slacking off there is sometime going on.
Anthony Johnson gave up fighting because he said he hated training so much. Yeah.
It's a tough gig, and it's really easy to slack off on because you don't have anyone fining you to miss practice. You know, you don't get in trouble if you miss practice, to be honest. So Drew doesn't.
You just lose your spleen in the next fight.
Yeah, you get your ass kicked, and that's but you don't learn until after then, and even then, a lot of the time you won't learn even after you get your ass kicked. Right. But Drew is a person that's really eager to learn, and I think that that's like a really cool and surprisingly unique quality about someone that's been in the game for as long as you have. So obviously, my guess is that the answer is that you truly love the sport, but there's got to be other things maybe driving you, or no? I don't know.
Man, this is such a deep question.
Yeah, I know.
And I have a lot to add on to it, so get ready, because
I mean, it could be simple as like, I view life in general, like no matter what you do, you should always focus on learning and living. Like no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you always want to learn more and you want to always live more. But I had the conversation the other day of like, I identify myself as a fighter, but what does that even mean? Does it mean like, stepping in a cage and punching another person in the mouth? Like, no, like fighting to me is a constant search of self-improvement.
Absolutely.
Just all the time, just constantly fighting away how to be a better man, how to better be a husband, how to be a better father, friend, brother, family member, just whatever. And so it's just, that's why I'm so eager to learn. Cause like, I always just want to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. I watch more film on myself than my opponents, because I feel like if they watch a film on me, they're already too late, because I'm trying to grow so fast that, any YouTube video you pick up of me, like I'm no longer that kind of a fighter anymore.
Okay, well, that's a great segue for me then. I want to know personally for you, name for me the fight that you remember that you were supposed to lose, that you won, that you actually won, that no one expected, and why you thought you were able to win that fight when everybody else thought you'd lose it.
Holy cow, there's like so many of them. I mean, I think as a fighter stepping in the cage, you always believe in yourself. Like you always believe that you have what it takes to win this fight.
That doesn't mean you're not scared though, right?
Oh, of course.
Right.
So I mean, going back to my Strikeforce debut, I think it's a fantastic story, but it's one of those fights where like a lot of cards were stacked up against me. So I walk into the gym, and my coach is like, are you cutting weight? I'm like, no, not really. He goes, what are you sitting at? I'm like, I'm about like 162 pounds, I think. He goes, good, stop cutting weight or stop dieting or whatever you're doing. He goes, you have the opportunity to fight in Strikeforce in 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, but what's the weight deal? He goes, like, it's just at 170. I'm like, well, how big is this guy? And he's like, oh, the promoter just said he's like 175. It's not going to be that big of a cut for him. So I'm like, okay, so we'll just meet at 170. It's all right. So I trained for 2 weeks. I watched film with the guy. The guy was like 7-1 with 7 like knockouts. Like the dude hits hard.
Who was it?
Lumumba.
Oh, it was Lumumba.
So then the game plan was like, he kind of brawls a bit. So I just need to be a more technical fighter and stuff. So I fought in the Broomfield Event Center. So I head out to,
That's where the
Denver.
first UFC was.
Right, yeah.
Was it in it's Westminster, right?
It was at the Broomfield Event Center.
Yeah, but that's Westminster or Boulder?
Around there, or maybe in Broomfield.
Either way, I show up and I go to like Dave and Buster's to like weigh in after like 2 Arby's sandwiches, like French dip sandwiches. Like I weighed 167, like not close to 170, right? And then I see my opponent who just sucked up, just dried out at 176.
Okay.
I then find out he's the 205 and 185 pound amateur champion in Colorado, and this is his first attempt at 170, and he doesn't make it. So the commission was like, all right, so you either take it or leave it. I'm like, well, I'm already out here, so I might as well. And that's what I felt like. Lumumba had kind of like a little following here in Colorado, and so I show up with just.
You didn't know this until you showed up.
No, I just showed up. Like, this is just my opportunity to fight in Strikeforce. So I go to the arena, and then I see Lumumba's entourage, and it's something to behold. Like, he has a lot of people. He had his own custom made robe. Like, he was just all into this. And like me, I was like just me and my buddy. Like, we're just like, all right, what's the worst that can happen? I'll go to sleep, wake up, and eat some pizza. Like, whatever. Nobody knows who I am here. So I just remember it like very vividly, the Broomfield Event Center. And then like, They announced my walkout, so I walk out and I see my name on that, like the banner, on the electrical banner around the entire arena. I was like, oh man, this is it. Like,
that got you right there.
This is what it's like, right? Yeah. And it just like this serene feeling, like so serene that like I remember like going up to the door, taking my shirt off, and going like, oh, it's actually warm in here because of the spotlights. And then I'm just like taking in the moment to a point where the announcer's like standing at 6'2", and I'm like, I'm not 6'2". Oh, that's the other guy. They're announcing the other guy. Like, I was just so in my own head at that moment.
Do you remember enjoying that feeling? Were you enjoying it?
Yeah, and that's it. That's like, I just enjoy
That's what it's
fighting.
all about.
Win or lose, it doesn't matter.
Your first fight, you literally were able to say you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's crazy, dude.
So anyway, so I had all these the dude was obviously close to 200 pounds stepping in the cage.
Right.
I'm maybe lost weight since weigh-ins, like 165 maybe. And
Was there a line on the fight?
Like a line?
Like a line, a betting line.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
It was a long time ago. Betting.
That's why I'm wondering if, like, because I'm wondering if you would have been, if you would have known that. Cause
most likely the small white kid from Nebraska was not the favorite.
Right, yeah.
So then, I went out there and, I mean, the dude looked like he was going to try to hit me hard. So like the fight was, I threw a kick into his gloves and just to make sure he keeps his hand there. And I just remember my corner being like, you got to be first. I was like, all right. And I saw him wind up. And so I threw at the same time and I connected right on the chin and he went to sleep in 16 seconds. And I was just as shocked as everyone else.
But you know what? You know what I take from that story, Drew? So much I take from, there's a lot in that story I take. The first thing I take is that you were there to just enjoy yourself. He was there to like have his robe and his entourage and show his, like I think there's a tendency a lot of time to forget about what you're really there to do. And you were just the young guy going, I'm just enjoying myself here. I'm here for the right reasons.
Right.
And I hate to quote movies, but there's a great scene in Rocky, which is my favorite movie of all time. And there's a great scene in Rocky where, Apollo Creed is just trying to have fun with Rocky and his corner says to him, he doesn't know it's a show. I don't know if you remember that, like going like, you're forgetting that like he's here to fight and just have a fight. You're here to put on a show. So the mindset that you told me is like this guy with his robe and everything, like he forgot really what he was there for. I mean,
right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I tell people this all the time and like, people that's never fought, they don't understand, but like, I mean, everyone could do well in the first round. Like the first round is the show round. Like I get to go out here and perform.
Right.
But it's that third, fourth, and fifth round that like all the layers of bullshit are like dissipate.
Wow,
and, like,
that's
that is you at your like the inside of you.
Who you are.
It's who you are.
Yeah.
And so like fighting a guy for 3 to 5 rounds, like I get to know this person. I'm sure his friends don't even know. And so that third round is what you have inside of you. And like that's why like if you love this sport, you won't quit in the third round.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps even just thinking about that because that's totally true, man. It's easy to do anything when the going is good, but when the going gets ugly, how are you going to respond, And
me and Corey have lots of conversations about the similarities in what we do. And I remember very strongly something similar to that, which is my first Tonight Show audition to be on the Tonight Show was a humongous thing for me. And I remember that they didn't put me up until very last, and there was 4 people left in the audience. And all my other friends were going like, you shouldn't go up. You're going to look terrible. It's only 4 people. And I was like, I'm just here to do this. This is what I do. And I'm going to go up. And I went up and I just did what I did. And I got the Tonight Show from that. And I always tell people like, I always am proudest of that story more than anything because it showed to me my character that even in the worst case scenario, I got up and still did my job. And that made me proud. And that's what I always try to say to young comics is like, it's not about waiting for the perfect opportunity. It's just about doing what you do and waiting for that opportunity to come to you.
Right.
You know?
I mean, there's so many like little like proverbs or things that I've read that like I always remind myself. But like one is like, like enjoy the journey and you like, it's worse to regret you didn't than regret you did. And lastly scenario, like you never perform, right? So like you being a comedian, me being a fighter, musicians, you don't perform for outcome. You perform because the love of it. So you go out there, you give 100%, you enjoy every moment of it. And then the response afterwards is, it is what it is.
But was that always the case for you? Because that was never always the case for me.
Meaning what, Corey?
Meaning that like, I wasn't going out enjoying myself in a lot of fights, man. Like I was way too nervous and scared to enjoy myself for majority of my amateur fights. And then in the beginning, professional fights until I kind of figured out what was going on inside of me, which was just that I was feeling a lot of external pressures from other people. And it just completely cut the line off of me being able to enjoy myself. I remember kickboxing was always like a lot of fun when I was an amateur. I had 10 amateur kickboxing fights and I was like, man, how come I don't get stressed about these? And it was because they were just fun for me. It was literally just going out and kickboxing, which is one, what I love doing more than anything. But 2, there was just like no pressure. I was like, I don't care what happens to my record on this.
So you were able to just enjoy the moment and see what happened.
For that, it took me a really long time to get there though. Like it took me probably 5 fights into my professional career for me to realize like, hey, this isn't about doing well. It's about doing your best. And it's about just staying true to who you are and how you want to fight. And if they like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't.
Right. And I mean, like speaking of my career, I had it in the beginning, and then there was a dip, like when I got signed by the UFC or even before that. Like now the expectation, not only from myself but from other people, like to be able to perform at your best, and like it really like created a handicap or like a block,
Of course.
right? And only as of recently, I mean, maybe like 3 years ago, I talked to somebody and we're talking about like, how do I imagine a champion behaves? Right, not what he does, but how he behaves. And I'm thinking about it, and then I realized like I was doing it when I was like 20 years old, right? And for some reason, this expectation of performing well kind of diluted my fun. Like I wasn't having fun anymore.
Isn't that weird?
So I was like, oh my God, like I need to go back to that. And ever since I went back to just having fun, my performance has reflected it.
Okay, but when did that happen? I'm just curious.
Probably right before my fight with Josh Berkman.
Which was how many ago?
Yeah, how many ago was that?
3 or 4?
5 maybe? 5 or 6 fights ago.
So you're saying because again, one of the other things I found really interesting about your career is you've had 5-fight win streaks, and I was wondering if those 5-fight win streaks were your happiest times or your most pressure-filled times, because I would assume that as you start going further and further into a streak, then that starts becoming the story instead of just enjoying the moment. And were you enjoying those streaks the way you should have? And I would assume after the first 5-win streak, you probably assume like, okay, this is kind of too easy. I'm going to be champion in no time at all. And that's got to be a lot of, you know,
Right. Like win streaks turn into like an expectation, but coming off a loss, now that's just like, who cares anymore? Like whatever. I mean, in my opinion, like some, you know, people might not have that same feeling, but
right.
you know, my win streaks coming off of like a loss, usually because I just go back to what I love doing. Cause when I started this, there wasn't any dream of grandeur. Like
there wasn't a thing like, I'm going to be the champion.
I mean, no, I thought I was going to be a champion, but what that meant to me wasn't money or fame. Like this was like, I wanted to be a world champion before the first Ultimate Fighter. Like,
right.
And so there was no money in this. Like there was no
I see what you're saying,
like
yeah.
who was the champion before Chuck Liddell? Like nobody like knows. Like there was no money. People didn't know.
Dana White, right?
I guess so. Yeah. So I was just like, I just want to do this for myself. Like,
Yeah.
I just like, this is why I want to do this. I want to wear a belt because I feel satisfied with that, not because other people think it's cool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only after the fact that like the Ultimate Fighter and then the UFC started blowing up and stuff like that, then like now money and fame's involved. But at the end of the day, I always have to remind myself, like, the reason I'm doing this is because this is a journey I wanted to begin and end when I was like 5 years old.
Right. And so what are those winning streaks happy times for you?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, like, it feels good when you're on a win streak and you're just like, you're doing well. Like that, it's evidence to what I already feel as far as confidence goes.
And then you're saying that, and then when it comes followed by a loss, that doesn't crash down everything that you started to believe or feel. You're saying that's almost a relief.
I mean, kind of like, and then it goes back to what we originally talked about. Like, you know, when you win, what do you learn? That you're doing some cool stuff,
yeah.
right? But when you lose, what do you learn? That something's like not correct and you can fix it.
Yeah.
And then it just like,
I heard Corey Garbrandt once say that getting knocked out was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Right,
and I
yeah.
thought that was a pretty cool thing for him to say. He said, I learned so much from that moment. And I always think that like the best thing that's ever happened to me in anything in my career is every time I've been humbled.
Yeah.
Because every time I've not been humbled, I kind of turn into a dick. And I'm kind of turned into the person because there was a point where I was like, you know, I'll never forget, and it wasn't even who I am. I'm a pretty sweet guy, and when I was starting out in the business, I all of a sudden started having a lot of people offer me like TV shows and stuff, and I remember there was an agent who had always kind of been a dick to me, and I saw him out in LA, and he's like, hey, Mitch, and I remember saying, you have to be nice to me now. And he went, fuck you. And I remember going like, what the hell was that? And I was just like, and I look back and now like, I must have been such a dick that like even he was like, I don't want to work with this guy. And I always wanted to tell him that was an important moment in my life because it proved to me that I wasn't anyone as more special than I thought I was.
Right.
You know, and I think that I think fighters have the one thing I see in the UFC that I always think is kind of funny, but I'm always like, maybe it's needed, or any fighting is like, every young guy says that they're going to be the champ. And I'm always like, you can't all be the champ. Like you have, and I'm like, is that a good mindset to have? Or should it just be like, I just want to win my next fight, you know?
Isn't it like reach for the stars and then you at least reach the clouds?
Well, I think it's, I don't know.
I don't know how that goes,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, I mean, you have it on your mind. Like, I'm going to be the best.
And do you have to still have that in your head constantly, both you guys, that like you have to believe that you're going to get there to be a good fighter?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to believe that you can be the best.
Yeah.
Because like I said, in that third round, it's going to show if you don't believe it.
I've kind of adopted a new philosophy after reading a John Wooden book that I was given by my basketball coach when I was in high school. Do you know John Wooden?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you probably don't know John Wooden. No,
Number 6 ranked fighter in the UFC.
Oh.
Way over my head.
He was a basketball coach for North Carolina, I think. Yep. But his whole philosophy was, it was never try to be the best player in the world. It was always, how can I get my players to play at their best in the role that I need them to play? And like after reading his book, and I forget exactly what his definition of success was. Now that I'm thinking about it really hard, but it's the peace of mind that you get knowing that you put forth an effort to be the best of which you're capable is what I think it is. And like, I've totally adopted that as like my new standard of what I see as success, because like you said, we're not all going to be champs. Will I be the champ? Will Drew be a champ? Who knows?
Right,
but
we're not all going to make $70 million for a Netflix special like Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Like seriously, that's really the same to us.
Yeah, exactly. And it just has to be, all right, well, when I showed up that night, either in the cage or on the stage, did I show up and did I give it my best that I know that I'm capable of giving, and I've kind of adopted that new philosophy. So for me, if a belt happens, a belt will happen. If it doesn't, I know that I'm working towards something every single day that's going to put me in the best opportunity for that. But if that doesn't happen and I show up and I wake up every morning knowing that I did the best I could,
right, when
this is all over, I can go to bed happy.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you think like a guy like Cowboy Cerrone, at this point now, he's one of the best fighters of all time, never been a champion. Can he continue fighting even if because at what point do you go like, it's probably going to pass me by as far as being a champion.
Right.
But I almost hate that that's the barometer of success, because Conor McGregor's a champion, and I think he's kind of a shitty human being. Whereas I think Cowboy's a good person. So
which after what Corey said, and like it makes absolute sense. I guess I got to change like how I say things. Like, it's not the belief that you are the champion, but it's a belief that you are a champion.
Or you could
and what
be.
A champion is,
Right.
is like they don't quit.
Great.
They don't find excuses for themselves. They they're very real and a champion goes through like the hard stuff and still maintaining like a purpose and hold themselves accountable and has integrity and all that stuff. Where being the champion,
Right.
and it's like, nah.
great point.
Yeah, because I would argue
Great
for
point.
you, when you're in round 3, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong. When you're in round 3 and you're gassed and you're tired and you have to get up off of the stool and you have to go fight someone for another 5 minutes, even when you don't want to, what's going through your head? Is it, okay, it's time for me to prove to myself that I'm a champion?
Exactly.
Or is it, yeah, that's got to be what it is. It's not, all right, let me do this because this is what a championship belt holder would do. It's like, no, like, this is me, and I'm not going to be a punk in round 3, because when things get tough, I'm not going to cower away.
Right.
Whether that makes me a champion or not. Champion in quotes as in you're a belt holder, but it makes you a champion in life, and that's what the real quest should be.
And I think the success in that story isn't like whether in that third round whether you won or lost.
Yes,
but
agreed.
the success was that the fact that you got off the chair.
Yeah.
That you got off the chair, you stepped forward to prove to yourself that you could fail or succeed. You got off that chair, and I think that like that little bit in fighting could be like anything in life. It's like, get off the couch, get off the chair, go out there and try to do the thing that you absolutely love to prove to yourself you can.
And I wish we could give kids that message so much more, because they're we're all being taught. And I remember, and it's a great story you just brought up, because I remember I'm a really small guy. I'm 5'4.5", and I was always small. And I never liked fighting, but I knew I could make a lot of friends by getting people to laugh. And one time a bigger kid in school wanted to fight me, and the whole school got together and got around us or whatever. And I remember going like, I don't want to do this, but I also don't want to not fight him because everybody's here and whatever. And we fought, and he clipped me really good, and I had braces, and I started bleeding, and I obviously lost the fight. I mean, if you want to look at who a winner or loser is, I was the loser of the fight. And for years, I went around going like, no, I won. I was just bleeding because I had braces. Like, I kept saying that. And now I look back and I'm like, no, I won because I didn't let the guy just chase me home like other bullies used to chase home kids. I actually fought him. And I was always like, I wish I would have known back then, like, I won the fight. It didn't mean I had to win the fight, but I won it as a human being. And for years, I always thought that, like, I was really embarrassed that I lost to that guy. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I'm a fan of fighters now is, you know, losing is just a part of what you do. And I had to learn as a comedian, like, you're going to die so many times on stage that if you think anyone who's not dying regularly is not really a good comedian. That means that they're just too safe.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to chase failure. You got to keep going after, like, pursue your passions, find failure, and then grow from it. I mean, anyone that tries to stay perfect isn't doing anything.
And do you, so here's a great question. And so do you enjoy your failures as, not as much obviously as your victories, but can you enjoy them? Can you at least say, because we were just talking before the fight and I brought up Beneil and I thought it was a split decision. You were like, no, he submitted me. And you were just kind of cool about it. And then you're like, he's a great fighter. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool that there's just a sense like that was the contest that day. And it seemed to me that you didn't even really, it didn't seem to get you down is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I mean, I always try to tell myself, like, there's no like success or failure. It's just a journey. You know, every book we read, there's always a conflict and a climax and a struggle and all that stuff. Right. So like, there's going to be struggle in every life. There's going to be failure and stuff like that. So I always have, like, I just remind myself that losses are part of the journey. And if I'm able to take something from it, then it's not an actual loss. Like, I've gained something from this.
Then it's never a loss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with my fight with Beneil, like, yeah, I got submitted, but there's a reason why, right? It wasn't just like, you know, I gave up on myself or something like that. Like, I made a mistake. He capitalized on the mistake. I did other things really well in the fight. And on top of that, Beneil's a great guy. So like, it's also comforting that, you know, we shared that moment. And it's like, I don't know, like, there's losses that I don't feel comfortable with, and there's losses that I do feel comfortable with. But in general, I try to hold like failure as a part of success.
What's a loss you didn't feel comfortable with?
So I got knocked out once.
Okay.
Only once?
Yeah. So
nice.
And then
the way you fight, that's good. Man.
So that loss came from because I took over the counter like diuretics to make the weight. And so I went into the fight dehydrated.
And you were wearing braces, I remember.
Right? So yeah, like the first punch that hit me, like I felt drunk immediately, and I tried to like fake it, and then like the second punch that hit me like put me out cold, and I was just like, man, that's not who I am. Like that's not the kind of fight that I do. And so it was just disappointing because I wasn't able to display what I'm usually capable of just because I made an error of taking water.
What's interesting in that is anyone watching that at home, anyone there, they don't know any of that backstory. They never know any of the backstory. It's like, you know, it's funny. Like I've done shows where I did a show an hour after my dad just died. And I did it because he had just died. I'd gotten the call. And I remember thinking if I didn't go on stage, my dad would be so pissed at me because my dad would say like, I'm going to be dead tomorrow too. Like that's what he would have said. Like you have a responsibility to go out there and do it. And I went out there and I just had a big smile on my face and I did a great show. And afterwards, I remember thinking like nobody has any idea. And I thought like, and that's kind of our job. Like our job is to go like, you know, there's so many fighters that I'm assuming have situations where you're like, you broke something, you had to deal with something, but the audience will never know any of that. They just think that like, oh, that guy sucks today, you know, whatever.
Right. And we had the conversation before, you know, turn the mic on, or it's just the inconsistencies.
Oh, don't bring up that story. Don't bring. No, I'm just kidding.
The inconsistencies of like people's performances, fighters' performances,
and I thought that was really
whatever
cool.
celebrity or athlete you want to think of. It's just there's so much things going on outside of these 15 minutes in a cage stage you're like, man, he didn't really behave like he wasn't really doing the things that, we assumed he would do. Because people don't really think about, like, we all have relationships, we have like finances, we have responsibilities, we have children, or, we might run into like some hard times, and like that definitely will affect your performance, whether it's a comedian, musician, fighter, or construction worker, or whatever.
Do you have a mantra or something that you repeat to yourself or say to yourself before a fight as you're being introduced that keeps you in the moment, or a little tool that you use to keep yourself from letting the outside world come in at that point? Or, what are you going through at that point, or how do you keep yourself centered and focused?
Drew's mantra might be his dance moves. Yeah, I think when Drew wants to be present, he reminds himself that this is fun, and he starts dancing. I notice a lot.
Yeah, you're a dancer?
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
like I'll dance whether there's like
that
music
might be
on
your
or not.
mantra, man, to remind you to have fun.
Yeah, dancing and stuff. I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of like like vibrations, or just being in the moment. You're just like, as soon as you start dancing, it's here and now.
Wait, now you dance, you mean right before the fight?
It's good dancing too. It's not that like bullshit, like white boy dancing from Nebraska that you would think. It's like pretty. So
you got a second career after this.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? We'll see if I'm able to keep up those dance moves. I've been punched in the face. But I also consider fighting is dancing. Like, I'm performing on a stage with a partner, and we're literally just doing our choreographed moves against each other.
But do fighters have to, because you were talking about the real world. So let's say you had just had a fight with somebody, or something happened, or you lost an important, investment or something. You have to totally take that stuff out, but you're still a human being, right? I mean, you still have to go to bed at night and still stress about stuff. You still have to stress about bills and all that kind of stuff. And how do you stop that from getting to you in that moment?
Man, it's such a hard thing, but practice, right? And it's just practice both being mindful, right? I mean, everyone can just generally just know where you're at in this very moment and appreciate the small moments that we have. And the fact that everyone's going to be anxious, everyone's going to have things on their mind, and just like have a place for it. Like, I get nervous before every single fight, and it never goes away. But what I have realized is, like, I know when I'm going to get nervous, and I know that it doesn't matter. I'm nervous because it means something to me, and that's the extent of it.
Right.
Like, nothing bad's gonna happen. I'm gonna wake up the next morning and have breakfast with my team. Like, nothing bad. So, like, I'm anxious because it's important to me, and so I need to enjoy this moment.
And I guess, one of the first fighters to ever kind of admit that was George St Pierre, who's maybe the best fighter of all time, who said that he throws up before fights. He gets so nervous and stuff. And,
right.
I love when fighters and performers of any type share that with the world, because what you start to learn is you're okay for the things that you go through. And I thought, and I told Corey that one of the reasons I'm fascinated with fighting is because I've never wanted to do it, but I've always been fascinated by it. It makes me nervous. But yet, and then people go, but you'll perform in front of 3,000 people. And I'm like, that's easy for me. Like, that's easy. And my friend Sean Date, who we've talked about, once said to me, I can't believe you do stand-up comedy. And I was like, I can't believe you fight. And he's like, to me, it's like, just to get slapped around for 3 rounds is kind of fun. And I was like, how is that fun to anyone to get slapped around? It's like, it's a different mentality,
You just roughhouse with your friends for a living. Like, you do it when
I roughhouse with my wife, and I get very bruised up from it. That's about all I'll roughhouse with.
But I'd be like scared shitless if I had to like perform in front of an audience,
Dude,
like trying to be funny.
Be so hard.
Yeah, like go and talk in front of millions of people. Like, I'd be super nervous. Like, I'd much rather be getting punched in the mouth right now.
Yeah, so we were doing a podcast actually earlier where David was in here, but
David Rodriguez.
Yeah, David Rodriguez, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, like, these guys are going to be really funny and I'm not very funny. Like, am I going to do okay? Like, being funny is one of those things that like, everyone likes the funny guy, it's like one of those personality traits that like everyone is drawn to. Like, you're not going to screw up by being too funny.
Well, being the funny guy is what stopped me from getting in fights, because I would make like, it literally saved my life in the same way fighting would. I was bullied a lot, but then I would make so many big guys laugh that they'd be like, man, Mitch is my boy, you don't touch him. And so I kind of had protection my entire life, and then my dad got me into karate, and then I became a black belt in karate, but it wasn't because I was a black belt. It was because it was a school that they just give you a new belt every year to keep your dad paying for it.
Yeah.
And every time I would have a fight, I would just get my ass kicked because I hated it. I hated fighting. And I was always like, why can't I love fighting? And I guess it's just different personality types. You know, it's just this like, I wish I loved it because I want to be able to, because I don't want to get scared anymore when there's a heckler in the audience and I think we're going to throw down.
Yeah.
I'm always like hoping that my boys are around.
Yeah, we got to start going to his shows in case that happens.
And protect
You
me.
know, yeah.
I mean, I've always wanted to be a singer, like being able to like sing on a stage. Like that'd be fantastic. But that's not on the cards for me. Like that's not.
Well,
at
me and
all.
Corey have an ongoing thing now that on our 100th episode, he's going to do 5 minutes of stand up, and I'm going to go around with a UFC fighter.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, we're trying to get him Gaethje.
Which
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I could take. That guy's kind of a punk.
You probably can.
Come on, man. I just know
You're a
what
karate black belt.
I just got to get him to.
You have a chance.
Actually, it was a brown belt with a black stripe, but I kind of pushed that because it made my dad happy.
I don't think Gage is a black belt or a brown belt. So
Yeah.
there you go.
What about you? Are you a black belt?
I am actually a black belt in Taekwondo.
Are you?
For like the same reason, just started doing it and they just gave me belts because we paid money.
What about you, Cor?
I did Taekwondo when I was a kid, but I hated it because it was all kick based. And I remember specifically, like, my instructor was just like old school Taekwondo, like just a dick. And like he would always yell at me for like throwing punches. And I was like, I'm beating them up though. Like, why would I kick them when I can just like punch these people? And he would always give me shit for that all of the time. And I was just like, I'm done with this sport.
Yeah.
Isn't that the scariest thing? Like the scam in like karate or Taekwondo, to where like they're teaching these kids confidence that they actually shouldn't have.
Well,
Yeah.
it is a scam. And what I do remember from karate was this. I learned how to break a board, which anyone can do, but you put a lot of drama into it and stuff,
Yeah.
and they teach you the
Gotta
key eyes.
key out really
and so I
loud.
remember we did it in front of our camp, and I broke a board, and everybody was like, he's a badass. And for like camp was the place where people thought I was tough. And I remember like thinking I was just scamming everybody. My whole, like, I was just like, I'm so bad at this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was absolutely lucky that like the cool like Taekwondo karate place that I was involved with also did mixed martial arts in addition to. And so it only took me a little while before I was just like, what are these big burly guys in a gi doing? And like, oh, they're doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh, what is that? And I went in there and then like that was the initiation.
You're like, is that ethnic food?
It sounds
Like, I like
delicious.
food.
Can I have some?
Speaking of food, actually, this is one thing that we kind of have to talk about if we're going to have Drew on the podcast, because
Fat
Drew is
shaming?
like, yeah, we're going to fat shame him for the next 20 minutes.
yeah, you do have a kind of a muffin top.
Yeah, that's gross.
If you're gonna dance, just cover that up. That's all.
The motion is sexy.
Yeah, so Drew is I would say, pretty well known throughout the fight world for like cutting the most weight. And it's not that like getting down in weight is like the thing that I want to talk about, but it's like kind of just how that's just another level of something that you have to deal with while you're going through training camp that like isn't really like thought about too much, because I mean, I cut a lot of weight also. I fight at 135 and I'm almost 6 feet tall. So like,
So what are you now?
I was 55 this morning, but that was a very like good weight for me outside of camp. So usually I'm like closer to 160. So it's me losing 25 pounds when I'm already really skinny. So, but just having to deal with that, because I know that it's like something that is always on our mind, man. So like, not only do we have to kind of like think about this big event that we have in 8 weeks, and we have to worry about getting better and getting in shape, and we have to deal with kind of all of the outside stuff that we have going on in life. And then if you're cutting a lot of weight, you also have to be starving during all of it. You know?
You starving? Like you're literally starving?
Not starving, but I mean, for me, I'm satiated, but I'm not going to bed
Satisfied.
Yeah, I'm not going to bed. Like I always remember, like after I'm done fighting, I don't crave any, or after weigh-ins, I don't crave anything that's terribly bad. I just want my stomach to feel full.
Yeah.
Like that's the feeling that I would miss, you know? So
Just
like
eating something.
yeah, just like I miss that feeling of being like, all right, that was enough. Because for 8 weeks you don't have enough, right?
Like half portions.
Yeah, can you just kind of go into that and what it's like for you, and just kind of, because I know it's like on our minds all the time, like, oh no, I can't go to dinner Friday night because I'm only allowed 3 ounces of
and
meat,
I would also add on to that, and I want your opinion. Then when you've done your weigh-in, you're supposed to then eat, right? So then all of a sudden, but you're not eating for pleasure, right? You're eating because you have to get up to a certain weight. So that's not even pleasure eating. And that, and you probably just want to just go out and eat burgers and stuff, and you can't. So that's a huge part of the business.
Yeah. So I tell people all the time, like people that I meet and we talk about fighting, and I was like, the hardest thing about fighting is you can't clock out. Like you have to be engaged
for those 6
24/7.
Yeah.
Majority of the time. And then with guys with big cuts like me, like even if I don't have a fight scheduled, I still have to be mindful of it. And so like, it's just trying to find that balance of like,
it just becomes your life.
Knowing when that I can like, relax a bit, and then knowing when I should like tighten up. And, but yeah, like when I get a fight scheduled, it's like, it's so regimented. Like it's like this meal at this time.
You have a nutritionist?
Yeah. I work with the George Lockhart's crew.
Okay.
And yeah, they're fantastic. So they've take the thinking out, which is amazing.
That is amazing. You just know what's put in front of you, you put in your mouth, and you don't have to think after that.
But like, let's say like Saturday night or Sunday morning where it's like, well, I'm, 24 hours away from my last training and 24 hours away from my next training. Right. And like most people are able to just like do nothing or just enjoy. And like being an athlete, you still have to make sure you're eating the chicken breast. You're also still like recovering and getting 8+ hours of sleep. And it's like, it's so regimented all the time. Like you just feel like a robot. So what I crave after a fight isn't actually food, but it's being able to live casually. Right? And that's the thing that I absolutely crave, is just being able to just let go. And so, I'll be.
It's a great way to put it, man.
Yeah, like the Sunday after my fight.
Just being normal.
Guys like, oh, what do you want to eat? And I was like, anything, I don't care. They're like, no, but you've been cutting weight. What do you actually want to eat? It's like, I want to eat what you guys are eating. Like, I want to go where you guys are going. I want to do, so why don't you just tell me what you guys are doing? I'm going to tag along and enjoy it.
Right.
Like,
right.
I want to live casually. And so I've spent a good time finding that balance, like it was strung up too tight for so long. And if it's too loose, then you can see the results immediately. So like just finding that balance. I know Donald Cerrone was really big on this. He said he was wound up too tight early in his career. And so he had to tell himself to just like let go and just, be more casual. Some people shouldn't be as casual. Some people should tighten it up, but it's at that good balance. And,
now, that time you had diuretics, was that because you had to make a certain weight just to get paid?
So what that was I fought 6 times in 6 months. So I fought every month.
Whoa.
And every time I made the weight and then like celebrated after the win, I would rebound higher and higher and higher. So by the time I got to the 6th fight, I didn't think I was going to make weight. So I was like, I gotta figure out how I'm going to do this. And so it was just the panic. But yeah, for that example, it was just because, I was going from feast to famine to feast to famine. So like I would eat nothing and then win a fight and then eat everything. And then,
right.
And so like, that's why I've developed like in my, longevity is you got to find a balance.
Yeah.
And so what I've told myself is, if I don't have anything scheduled, Monday through Friday is my regiment, and then Saturday and Sunday is like off, right?
Yeah.
And then as I get closer and closer to a fight, I'll just tighten it up a little bit. So then I'll have just one day where I'll just have one meal. So that way I'm still living, but in a more guided fashion.
So we only have a few more minutes. I have a question for you that it's always interesting for me with fighters. And I've never talked to you about this, Corey, so I also want your opinion as well, which is one of the number one things I deal with as a stand-up comedian that people don't know is what's going on in the front row. It's a very, very present thing in our heads. We hope when we go on stage to just have, you don't want people laughing too hard, because that actually takes you don't want people not laughing or just staring at you. That's worse. You just want that nice laugh. The most important thing that you get, though, is every now and then you'll get someone that you can't help but keep noticing, and they get in your head because they're right there making a weird face or they're doing something. I've had girls look at me and just mouth, "What are you talking about?" over and over and over again. And even though I'm killing, and I have to keep then mentally saying, "Don't look at that person," because they're going to do it. So of course I want to know the crossover with you guys. Is there something ever being yelled out that you definitely hear in the middle of a fight that you're almost mad at yourself for hearing or noticing or seeing somebody or something while you're in the middle of a fight?
All the time. I hear fighters say like they don't hear the audience. It's just them and the opponent. And like I disagree wholeheartedly. Like I hear everything that's being like, if I hear boo, I'm making something happen, right? I don't want to disappoint the audience. I hear cheering, I'm just like, it gives me energy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, this reminded me of my very first fight in the UFC. Like I fought in this arena and there was like not a lot of people showed up for the first fight. So it was just literally, it was practically empty. And I remember during the fight, it was like in the middle of the second round, my opponent's mouthpiece falls out. And so it was a short break in the action. And I'm looking out and I saw Forrest Griffin in the first row. And I'm in the middle of this fight going, oh shit, Forrest is watching me fight. Like, oh my God, like this is it.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I mean, it definitely.
And what did that do to you? Did it motivate you?
Yeah. I mean, my first performance in the UFC was not the greatest, but like it definitely did motivate me though. Just having like those eyes on you, know, Dana White's eyes and it's pretty intense.
That's that moment you were just talking about where you're like, you can't let that outer stuff get to you. You just have to go on and go.
I think that was the moment that I realized that like I'm in the UFC. Like when I noticed that Forrest Griffin was in there. You know, at first like, it's just a cage and spotlight and cameras. Like I've been here before,
right?
But it wasn't until I noticed Forrest Griffin that I was just like, oh, this is the UFC. Holy cow.
Yeah. There's 2 times that's happened to me, I would say. And one of them was like, when you notice boos for sure.
You notice boos for the fight or for you? Like meaning
well, you don't know really when you're in there. You assume that it's because people think that it's a boring fight. Right? So, if I hear boos, I'll try to create action too. But what upsets me more, man, is like, I remember specifically a couple times when I was fighting John Lineker, and like John Lineker throws really heavy punches. And I know that people can hear him, you know, so he would hit me and they would make loud noises, but I'm catching everything on my guard. But I would hear the crowd go, ooh. And in my head, I'm like, shut up. Shut up. Those aren't even hitting me. Yeah.
I have braces.
Yeah. I wanted to like stop and call them all stupid, you know? I was like, you guys are idiots. You guys don't know what you guys are talking about.
Great, dude.
Or when you throw a kick and it hits your toes and it makes a loud slap noise and everyone's like, oh. Yeah. And you're like, no, I actually missed.
Yeah, those are the kicks that hurt the least. Are the ones that
time
just
and be
slap.
like, he didn't even touch me, guys.
Yeah,
right, let's go back.
Yeah, it does mess with you though.
Yeah,
I've tried so hard to never give those people power because I know that once I've gone there, it's taken from my show.
Well, and it's probably really in your face being you.
And I know for a fact that like I can handle them. I know how to take care of hecklers if someone's doing something. But at that point now, my show's not my show anymore. They've now inserted themselves, and I hate to give them that power. Yeah. You know, and one of the things that I hate about seeing a live UFC event is I love technical fighting. I love companionship. I love seeing the fighters hug each other afterwards. I love all that stuff because that's what I want to teach my kid. And there'll be a fight, and there'll be a great grappling going on, and I'm enjoying that. And there's always some white trash woman behind me going, "Stop dancing, stop dancing!" And I remember this is at the last UFC in Denver, and I remember just wanting to throttle her, going like, "You're taking from my enjoyment." And I realized like that's what people in my audiences get when someone's heckling. It's just like you realize like. That's if you can't enjoy it for what it is. I don't want to just see 2 guys hit each other. I want to see because you can just go see that in the backyard if you want. These are the top fighters in the world. I want to watch them, and I despise that. I despise any kind of booing like that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it like dealing with that? How do you handle that?
I won't let it get to me until I tell them I know Drew Dober. Usually, they say, "Is he still dancing?" And no, you know, I'm good enough to deal with any heckler at this point.
Okay.
But I will not deal with them until it absolutely is necessary to do because some people will just make themselves so present the more you ignore them. And at that point, I'm like, okay, you've won, but you didn't really win.
Yeah.
Like, because you were just an asshole at that point, you know? And so that's the situation. Cool.
Is that our time?
I think we're 1:02. We went 2 minutes over.
Okay,
so we owe you overtime for that, Drew. So will you come on again? Because you're awesome.
Oh, absolutely. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoy you guys.
It's really good.
This room doesn't creep you out.
I mean, it creeps me a little bit. I mean, it's kind of
that guy sitting next to you just.
That's Jason.
All right, so we have to thank Wendy Curtis for letting us use Comedy Works Downtown, best comedy club in the entire world. my partner Corey will be doing a set here for 5 minutes after we do 100 episodes, and I'll go around with Drew.
Here? I'm doing it here?
Who else you gonna do it?
Oh, I thought it was somewhere smaller. I don't know.
No. You're doing it here. Yeah.
I'll be here definitely.
Yeah, it'll just be the guys on the team.
You can corner him.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the worst cornering.
Yeah, thank you to Comedy Works for letting us use their place, and thanks Drew Dober for being a really great
thank
guest.
you for having me. It's been a lot of fun,
awesome.
man.
We really enjoyed you, and thanks for being so gracious with your stories and stuff like that. So,
And handsome. Thanks for being handsome.
Oh, you didn't see my dance moves.
all right, let's go get some real food.
Podcast.